In this episode, I speak with Cory Ruth, the women's dietitian. She is a registered dietitian, women's health expert, and she helps women understand that hormone imbalances don't need to be overwhelming. She knows exactly how you feel, and in fact, in this episode, we go through how Cory came to find that she had a hormone imbalance herself and what she did to change it. Could it be that a hormone imbalance like PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, might be influencing your mood, your energy, or your weight? We discuss all the nitty-gritty, how to bounce back, and bouncing back in more ways than one, not just from hormone imbalances, but also how to bounce back when life completely pulls the rug from under you. Cory shares her amazing story about how she completely had to redefine herself as a single mom after being left at 35 weeks pregnant, her husband asking her for a divorce, and how she absolutely rose like a phoenix from the ashes out of that devastating situation. You're going to want to hear that story and how it ends. It's pretty inspiring. So if you need that dose of upliftment, hope, inspiration, go listen to it. All right, I'll let you get into the episode. Let's go to the show. Welcome to the show, Cory. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Yes, me too. Thanks for having me. What an amazing resource you have.
Thank you. And this has been such a long time coming. I've been following you on Instagram, see your reels come up. You have such great reel game, girl.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I try. The crazy world out there on the old Instagrammy, but we
Yeah,
try.
it is a crazy world, isn't it? But
Mhm.
Cory, first thing I'd love to just kick us off as we dive into this beautiful
Yeah,
conversation. Don't quite know exactly where it's going to take us just yet. Is what is it
absolutely.
that you wish more women knew
About PCOS
about their
or is
health,
that an open?
about life, anything? I'm leaving
Oh
that
gosh.
open so that you can take it wherever you
Okay.
want.
Okay, I like it. All right. I always talk about, I wish more women had a better understanding of their cycle and their hormones.
Mm,
We come from different places, but here in the US, there's such a lack of, you know, guidance and understanding and instruction. We get like maybe, one quarter, one semester in high school of true sex education, and it falls short. And we really don't talk enough about helping young girls who obviously eventually become women, understand what's happening with their hormones and how that influences everything about them, from their mood to their sleep to their energy, to their fertility. We get a lot of instruction on how to avoid pregnancy,
yeah.
which is obviously helpful. But then, thinking about the flip side, we get no education on how to actually achieve that when the time comes. So we're kind of thrown on birth control, and we're on birth control for years and decades, and then we come off of it, and then we can start to see issues potentially with our cycle and our hormones and our periods and fertility. And it's like we're kind of left to our own devices at that point, because typically we're in our 20s, 30s, we're out of school, and there's just no resources. So I wish more women knew about that, especially here. I can't speak for other countries, but in my own experience here in the US, trying to get a grip on all of that.
Oh, totally. No, it's very similar in Australia too. And unfortunately, this culture
Okay.
of almost being ashamed or
Oh
wanting to
yeah.
hide your period and the fact that you have a period, it's like, let's make this as discreet and, try and skip it because that's so great. We can
Yeah.
skip our cycle and how awesome you don't have to
Uh-huh.
deal with these annoying periods.
Right. I know exactly. Yeah. I'm 100% sure that if it were men having their periods, it would be like the talk of the town.
Yeah.
And everyone would be on the same page and everyone would know what's happening. And, it would not be this shameful, hidden event, that we have to suffer silently through.
Totally, totally. Okay, so take me back a little bit to the start of your journey. Obviously, you are such an amazing expert in women's health and PCOS. You are a fully trained qualified dietitian, which is amazing. Let's go back to before all of that. What did you learn and what did you experience with your understanding your body and your cycle? Did you know about this stuff from the get-go, or was it a messy kind of process of figuring it all out on your own?
Yeah, totally. So kind of touching on that, what I last, said, when I was in high school going through sex ed class, we talk about the 28-day cycle. Your period's going to come on day 28. You ovulate on day 14, and that's that. And at the time, I was thinking, wait a minute, what? No, like I did not have a 28-day cycle. I didn't know when the heck my period was going to come. So it made me feel like something was wrong with me. I felt like a freak because all my girlfriends at school were like, oh, well, I know my period's coming. My period's coming on Tuesday and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, how do you know that? It was like, my mind was blown. I was like, how do you know when your period's coming? I'd never heard of PCOS, which for those listening stands for Polycystic Ovary Syndrome. And it's pretty common. It's the leading cause of infertility, at least here in the US, and I wager probably worldwide. But it is also estimated to be present in about 10% of our female population. So pretty common, but no instruction, no knowledge about what that was. So I didn't actually know that I had that. I didn't understand why I was so different than all of my friends who were, having their periods every month, and they knew when they were coming and they knew when to expect their PMS. And me, it would just be like all of a sudden randomly I would feel horrible. I feel all moody and sad and tired, and then the next day my period would show up. It's like, oh, okay, I'm not actually going clinically insane. It was that I had no idea my period was on the horizon, right? So this, these big hormonal fluctuations, which influenced my weight, my mood, energy levels, all of those things.
Yeah.
So I struggled with that, and I was put on birth control. Every kind of birth control that's out there, I've probably been on it at some point. And I never could find something that I actually really liked. So I was frustrated with the whole synthetic hormones as being kind of the solution. And I think a lot of us with PCOS can, resonate with this, that we, when we go to the doctors, we're given birth control as the fix. And we're also told either lose weight or come back when you want to get pregnant. And, there's so many flaws in all of that guidance. Number one, the birth control piece. Obviously, birth control can be really helpful. And if you want to take birth control, totally go for it. But my thing is that birth control is not the only solution to PCOS. There's lots we can do from a dietary and a lifestyle, supplement, stress standpoint to help control and manage this beast. So just, popping birth control is not the only fix. And I really aim to educate women on that part. But when it comes to, the weight loss piece, we do have research that shows a certain amount, when warranted, of weight loss might be beneficial, but it's certainly not a fix all, and it's not the only solution. And also PCOS is not always an issue with weight. Not everyone who has PCOS is, classically defined as overweight. So what do we do with those people, right?
Yeah.
And then the last piece, the come back when you want to get pregnant, PCOS is not just an issue of fertility. Women struggle outside of trying to get pregnant and post-pregnancy. Obviously from a very young age, you can have PCOS and be dealing with those issues. So basically all of that, I was really dissatisfied with how care looks for PCOS here in the US and in our healthcare system. We have amazing doctors, and it's truly, it's really more, I think, an issue of our healthcare system as a whole. And not always our individual doctors, who can be incredible and, obviously very intelligent, capable, experienced individuals. But our healthcare system allows them 10, 15 minutes with us, right? So our appointments are rushed. And once I started to understand the connection between nutrition and PCOS, I thought, okay, I'm a registered dietitian, and I really want to specialize in women's health. And I've worked in several women's clinics alongside some amazingly talented OBGYNs and nurse practitioners. And so I've really been able to collect a lot of experience along my way. And I thought I'm the perfect person because, here's this need for more care for this condition outside of that prescription air quotes, Band-Aid solution. And there's this huge nutrition and lifestyle component that needs to be addressed that can really help make a beneficial, big positive impact on this condition in women who are struggling. So I, bridge the two together. And that's where really my practice was born. I did not, when I first started, I said, I do not want to go into PCOS. That's the only thing I don't want to do.
Really?
Yes, because it's so complex. It's so complicated. There's so many layers and moving parts to this condition. It looks different on everyone. So it's very, there's a lot of gray area. It's a beast. And I thought, I'm not going to touch that ever. And then of course, as I went along, seeing the need that was out there for help and the desperation and the struggle that women face, I thought, you know what? No, this is actually what I need to be doing. And I have PCOS too. So it was all kind of a perfect storm to create this practice. And since I've opened my doors, it's really just taken off. And so many women with PCOS are struggling and they need help. And so I do a lot of work in fertility. I do work in weight management because that's another big part of PCOS that's poorly understood and really difficult to manage.
What do you mean though? Doctors are just like, just go lose weight. It's easy.
Right. Yeah.
Lose some
Yeah.
weight.
Eat less, move more. Right. Yeah. No.
No.
There's so many.
It's
so
so
many
complex.
things.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And then we hear the word leading cause of infertility.
Yeah.
And of course, that brings up a lot of fears, especially in the sense of like that all or nothing thinking of, wait, if I have PCOS, does this mean I can never get pregnant?
Right.
Here you are, you're due to give birth in sometime in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right now.
2 days. Yeah.
Is PCOS something that means that you cannot get pregnant?
So the reason why PCOS is the leading cause of infertility is because women with PCOS, many of us, not all, and that's where it gets real tricky, but many of us, we ovulate either irregularly or not at all. That's what makes our periods all over the place. Yeah. Sometimes we see women go months or even years without any period, no bleeding whatsoever. We see women who are they come in and they say, I have a period every 2 weeks. It's not a true period, but they're bleeding just constantly. So we see these totally different patterns of bleeding, but what they pretty much all point to is that you're not ovulating. And if you're not ovulating, you're not going to get a real regular, period coming every roughly 21 to 35 days. So if you can regulate ovulation, and everything else aligns, it's not, fertility obviously has many more moving parts than just ovulation. But if you can get ovulation going, you have a really good chance as a woman with PCOS to get pregnant on your own. Or if you're going to use, some medications, Clomid, letrozole, whatever, you have a good chance. So yeah, a lot of us are told that at a very young age. I was told that, it's going to take significant medical intervention for you to ever get pregnant on your own. Or that doesn't make sense. It's going to take significant medical intervention to ever get pregnant. So, good luck basically was what I was told. And that's really an awful thing to hear, especially when you're young and you're like, well, I don't know if I really want kids, but I guess I do now that that's off the table. And maybe I should start, maybe I want to have kids in my, young 30s versus my later 40s, which is what I was planning, because you have all this fear in your mind and anxiety about it never happening. And a lot of women are told that. So we definitely need to change the narrative there and help women feel more empowered about their own fertility if they do have PCOS and they're struggling with ovulation and period regularity.
Yeah, it's the classic like information and knowledge is power. And at least then you know what to work with when you know that you're dealing with PCOS, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And then you can make the changes required. Now, a lot of people, especially if you're on the spectrum of managing weight or having an
Mhm.
unhealthy relationship with food. Maybe you've tried to apply the doctor's advice, go lose weight. Okay, I'll just stop eating. I'll just
Yeah.
restrict. I'll go on a
Right.
diet. There's
Mhm.
usually been some kind of a journey with food that has led to a lot of beliefs and, yo-yo dieting and all the stuff that comes along with that. What I
Mhm.
love about what you do, Cory, is you're so balanced about the approach. It's like,
Mm.
do you
Mhm.
want to talk us through a little bit of that idea? Because traditionally, just to give context for everyone listening, a PCOS lifestyle is like cut out this, cut out that, never consume this, no carbs or sugar ever. Pretty much like it sounds like another diet, and I think that can be really intimidating for some people. Can you share a little
Totally.
about how you approach it?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad you asked. And I do like to talk about this because there's so much noise out there on, on the good old World Wide Web. But also, just talking about just opening up the conversation of weight management, weight loss is, it's interesting, as a dietitian, that's a lot of instruction we get in school is around diabetes education, right? And like obesity and blah, 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 blah. And now we've really, at least here in the US, we've shifted to this narrative of weight loss is bad. And talking about weight loss and weight management is automatically correlated to you hate yourself, you hate your body, you're sabotaging your health, you have purely aesthetic, driven reasons for wanting to work on weight loss. And it's
Yeah.
and that's so false. And I really fight back against that because when I started out as a dietitian, I had that same thought. I was all, you know what, we need to go towards body positivity, which I still very much believe in. But and we don't, I don't want to talk about weight loss. We just need to accept everything, and it is what it is, and intuitive eating and and that can all be helpful and great. But the way that I work is that you do not, like, hating your body is 1,000% never a requirement to want to work on changing your body composition. And you can have so many reasons on, for working on weight loss, including period restoration. If you have PCOS, you want to get pregnant. I've helped clients lose weight just so they could qualify for IVF, and now they have the families that they've always dreamed of. So there's very different reasons why people might want to pursue weight management. And I think it's important to address that because so many of us as dietitians really tiptoe around that space. And I think a lot of women too, they're like, well, I want to work on weight management, but it's for XYZ purpose. I don't care what the purpose is. If you want to work on weight loss, it does not mean that you hate yourself or you hate your body. There's so many other things to consider there. So with PCOS specifically, there's so much out there about, remove this and this and this from your diet and you'll be good to go. We just don't, science, research, whatever you want to call it, does not and has never supported that. And it's really unnecessary. And I call it lazy advice because it really doesn't help women understand what's going to be most helpful in managing PCOS for life, because there's no cure for PCOS. You pretty much deal with issues forever, and it's about management. So when we're talking about elimination and restriction, you're really not setting yourself up for something that's sustainable in the long
Yeah.
run. Because yes, you can like vow to never eat a piece of cheese or like toast again ever in your life. That's fine. Some people actually accomplish that, but I would wager it's a very small amount. And most of us want to live our lives normally. With this condition, PCOS or not, we want to enjoy life and enjoy food. Food is cultural. We eat for many more reasons besides just pure hunger, right?
Totally.
Cultural, social. So taking all these things off of our plate, no gluten, no dairy, no soy, no sugar, no, gosh, I've heard it all. It's just unsubstantiated and it's lazy advice because it's not teaching women how to actually make the way that they want to eat work for their PCOS and vice versa.
Ooh,
So
I like that.
yeah. So I really come at, it from a place of you can really eat whatever types of foods you want, but let me teach you how to do that correctly for your PCOS, your blood sugar, which is, there's a huge blood sugar component to hormone health and nutrition and PCOS. They're all really lumped together. So I like to teach women how to eat the things that they want to eat, but do it in a way that better supports their hormones and their PCOS, so that nothing is off limits. And everything in moderation, and this concept of balance is so important. And that's what we find to be most effective when controlling symptoms in the long run, because anyone can go do a crazy crash diet. Anyone can do that for a couple weeks, maybe a few months even, but eventually they're going to crash and burn. And that's where we see, these really restrictive diets like the ketogenic diet, which is, thank God, fizzling out now, I think. Intermittent fasting, some people, can find that to be helpful. Really difficult to do that long term as a woman. And there's other things to get into there. But, all of these kind of more aggressive approaches to food and eating, they're not helpful in the long run. And we really need that long-term, sustainable, maintainable plan when we have PCOS.
Yeah, I love that so much, Corey. It's like, let me explain to you the mechanics of your body and how it functions
Right.
according to various foods, not
Yeah.
here's a list of foods, I know best what food's right for you kind of thing.
Exactly. Right.
So
Right.
beautiful and so empowering for people because, yeah, then we get to look at a food and make your own decisions based on, okay, I know the
Yeah.
protein's going to do this, the fats do that, and the carbohydrates do that.
Yes.
Amazing. I love
Very.
that so much because it just gives
Yeah.
freedom to people. And we don't
Yes.
have to think of it like a life sentence of, yes, sure, you're going to be managing stuff for life with your health, but also,
Mhm.
well, at least your fertile years. Do you see
Right.
effects of PCOS beyond menopause?
You can. Yeah. Yep.
Ooh, tell me about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we definitely need more research, but even if you're perimenopause, postmenopausal, you can still be impacted by a lot of the more metabolic issues with PCOS, right? So, and also I will argue too, adrenal. So even if a lot, some of your stuff isn't coming from estrogen and progesterone, you can still deal with insulin resistance. That actually, insulin issues, blood sugar dysregulation, those rates actually go up as we get older, right? We see higher rates in older people. And also adrenal and stress, because there's a huge adrenal tie and connection to PCOS. So even if we don't have our, sex hormones happening at their normal amounts and flowing at their normal times, we still have lots of issues when it comes to metabolic health and adrenal health too.
Yeah.
So it's certainly not something that just you hit menopause and poof, it's gone.
Yeah, okay, I hear you. And
Mm-hmm.
so let's talk about where anxiety comes into PCOS. Where do
Yeah.
you see that overlap, and do you see anxiety typically presenting in the kind of women you work with?
Absolutely. So we have a ton of research on stats, but where we don't have a lot of research is on the exact etiology, basically the cause behind that stat. So the
Yeah.
stat goes like this: women with PCOS are at a 3 times higher risk of both anxiety and depression than women without PCOS. So what's the cause? That's where the waters get a little murky. If you look at all of the research, we don't exactly know what's causing that, but we do have some theories and we can talk through those. But almost every single woman that I treat has anxiety, depression, or both. I see that all the time. And I think that that's gotten worse, honestly, since the pandemic, too. I see more issues with adrenal and cortisol dysregulation in general. But yeah, so one of the theories is that just simply kind of hormonal. There's a couple studies that show connections between insulin resistance, which is a very classic hallmark of PCOS, and anxiety. And we also have some research, not a lot, we definitely need more, but on a connection between elevated androgens and anxiety. So androgens are our male sex hormones, like testosterone. That's the most well-known one. And a lot of times women with PCOS have elevated levels of testosterone. That's why some of us can deal with things like facial and body hair growth, hair loss on the head, acne, weight gain, irregular periods. Sometimes that can be driven by that elevated testosterone. So we do have some research there, without getting too into the nitty gritty. And then we also some research that demonstrates women with PCOS having lower levels of certain neurotransmitters like serotonin And those are, a lot of our kind of happy chemicals. So so we do have some research there. But then the other theory is just simply the fact that PCOS can cause symptoms that are really physical and that can manifest in anxiety and depression. Because if you're a woman and you're growing a full-on beard and you're having to shave every morning, that's difficult on so many levels. And on top of that, you can't lose a pound no matter, you're following the same diet and exercise plan as your best friend. She's losing weight, you're not. I mean, a lot of those symptoms that women with PCOS deal with are just defeating on so many levels. And also the infertility one. It's hard to feel like a woman when you haven't had a period in 3 years, right? And you can't get pregnant. So I think a lot of just the symptoms of PCOS drive that issue when it comes to anxiety and depression. So it's hard to say exactly what's causing what, but those are some of the theories behind that statistic, which we've seen again and again and again. And we also have women with PCOS have higher levels of cortisol, which is our stress hormone. So a lot of us have this adrenal component, and when it comes to elevated cortisol and stress, a lot of us are just more sensitive to stress. So the way that the stress manifests in our bodies is going to look a lot different than how stress might show up in the woman next to us without PCOS. So there's that tie. And then the last one is really, comes down to hormone stuff. In my opinion, I see a lot of this, women who are not ovulating. Ovulation is the only time in our cycle that we're producing what's called progesterone. Progesterone is kind of the yin to estrogen's yang, right? The two should be balanced. Progesterone is a calming hormone, actually, and estrogen tends to be a little bit more anxiety inducing. So if you're not ovulating and you're producing all of this estrogen and it's unopposed estrogen, we're not balancing out with that nice calming ooey gooey progesterone, we see lots more anxiety. So there's, sometimes an estrogen and ovulation issue as well.
And this is affecting women without PCOS as well. So
Yeah.
many women have this imbalance of estrogen and
Mm-hmm.
progesterone.
Totally.
Super common. And so if anyone's
Yes.
listening and you're like, I'm not sure I'm the PCOS person, that's still a really common hormone imbalance that can impact anxiety too.
Yes.
And Corey, I mean, gosh, like
Absolutely.
it makes so much sense, all of those factors that you mentioned there regarding the the way that certain beliefs can come up, and it could be really hard to manage those hard times with PCOS. What are some things that you suggest, or how do you support women in that space where, maybe more in that shifting the mindset to coming to an acceptance around it? What are some things that you found help people? Is it just accepting, like, this is how it is, and, but trying to empower yourself with the tools? What else sort of helps when people are feeling quite disheartened about, the facial hair growth, the weight issues, fertility, stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think there is a certain element of acceptance, but not to the point that it makes us not jump into action. Because there's definitely some benefit in saying yes. I'm a woman and I have PCOS, and that's what it is, right? I can't change that. We don't know why some women have PCOS and some don't. That etiology is really unclear. There's, again, other theories there. But there is kind of, I think it is necessary and helpful to accept some pieces of that diagnosis, but not to the point where it allows you to say, I'm not in control. Because it's so much better to feel empowered with this condition. And okay, so what can I do? What can I do to actually make progress if I don't want to just take birth control or something like metformin? And there's so much we can do. And that's a big piece of PCOS that I like to work with, because I like to educate women on what their options are. Actually, if you just do this, when it comes to movement, like exercise, or change up the way that your plate is looking, you can make huge strides in this condition. They don't happen overnight, but we didn't get here overnight either. So, take the pressure off of yourself for perfection in the next day to see all of these changes. They take time, but implementing them and being consistent with them, working on stress management, working on getting inflammation down, working on gut health and digestion. I already said stress. All these different moving pieces can be so empowering to help women say, you know what? Yeah, I actually do see, in a month's time, I do see the facial hair on my, that I have slowing down. And I don't need to pluck at it or shave it as much. It sounds small, but that's so huge. It's so empowering for women to see that progress just by doing, dietary supplement lifestyle changes. So, helping women accept the diagnosis is one piece, but not to the point where it doesn't allow them to kind of figure out how to spring into action. And that's where I come in to help guide them, through the necessary steps to make that happen. What exactly do they need to be doing in order to see real change and real progress? And that empowerment is so important. I mean, that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So beautiful. You know what I realize we haven't covered yet?
Yeah.
There could be someone listening right now who's thinking, oh, geez, all these like symptoms, maybe that's me, but I don't
Yeah.
know.
Mm.
Maybe, I mean, I get some chin hairs or I get some like, how
Right.
do we know it's actually PCOS? Because some women can just
Mhm.
get a few hairs on your chin, and that's okay. It's not necessarily the
Totally.
full PCOS story.
Yeah.
Where do we differentiate with that, Corey?
Yeah, so PCOS can be diagnosed by a doctor. And basically, if you meet 2 out of 3 of the diagnostic criteria, you can get a PCOS diagnosis. So the first one is if you have irregular periods. That's not going to be something that you're diagnosing through blood work, right? If you have an irregular period, I'll define that further.
Yeah.
And there's honestly, there's different interpretations of this. There's no one, but typically, yeah, regular period would be every 21 to 35 days.
And I'm so glad you defined that because so many women say to me,
Yeah,
"Oh, my periods are really are like they're kind of irregular," and I'll
right.
say, "How irregular?" Oh, well, sometimes they vary like 2 or 3 days in a month, and I'm like, "That's regular, girl."
Yes, that exactly. So we have to be realistic too. Like a few days fluctuations, totally normal. But if you have a cycle that looks like this, 20, 25 days, 50 days, 35, 70 days, or every 15 days, or it's just not coming for months, that one's a little bit more obvious, then we start to consider, yes, that does sound irregular. So that's the first criteria. The second one is having elevated male sex hormones, either in blood work. So you go to the doctors, you can ask for a full hormone panel that will include testosterone, and it may include something called DHEA or DGS. And you can see if that's elevated or elevated androgen symptoms. So if you're having facial hair growth, that would be an elevated androgen symptom. Body hair growth, so chest hair and back, nipple, whatever. Acne would be another one. So those are more physical symptoms of androgens that you can have. So that's number 2. And then the last one is basically you have to have a pelvic ultrasound, and they find what we call polycystic ovaries. And I want to define that further because when we hear the word cyst, polycystic ovary, like it's kind of a misnomer. We really want to change the name, but it is what it is. So when we're talking about the cysts on our ovaries for PCOS, we're not talking about those big painful cysts that we can have that rupture, cause us a ton of pain and bleeding and all of that jazz. You
Yeah.
can still have that and have PCOS, but the cysts that we're looking at are actually, they look like a little string of pearls on an ultrasound, and they're basically a bunch of immature follicles. And what those follicles are doing is they're all competing to ovulate the egg, and no one's winning.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of collecting them on our ovaries. So, and I get a lot of flack whenever I say that because PCOS does not cause pain. those are not the painful cysts. You can't feel those types of cysts. You can have other cysts present, but PCOS specifically is not driving any kind of pain. So it's very different than something like an endometriosis diagnosis. So if you're having period pain or pelvic pain, we're not considering that when we're looking at and we're talking about PCOS specifically. So yeah, so you do need to go to a doctor and look at that, have that criteria assessed, and go from there whether or not you have PCOS.
And it's not so uncommon for someone to have PCOS and endometriosis as well. There's that
Exactly.
overlap too.
Yes, yeah, and thyroid actually is even more common. Thyroid issues we see a lot with PCOS, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
right. And so, going back to this diagnostic criteria, you
Yeah.
could have irregular periods, but your androgen level are normal and there's no cysts on the ovaries. And then what do we say? That
If
often
you
happen?
have elevated androgens and no.
Well, no, so if you had irregular periods, but your androgen
Okay.
levels were normal,
Uh-huh.
and you didn't have any signs of that, of the male hormone elevation,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have cysts on the ovaries, is that not PCOS?
Yeah, then you're only fulfilling one, right, out of three. But there's other reasons why someone's period can be irregular. If that's your only symptom, you've got to look at other things. Thyroid issues can cause that, stress, what we call hypothalamic amenorrhea. So basically, you're overtaxing your body in whatever form, whether it's exercise or stress, and you're under fueling potentially, so you're not eating enough. You're not eating enough fats. There's all kinds of reasons why your period could be missing. It doesn't have to be PCOS, but typically, probably the most common reason for period irregularities is PCOS. So it's a strong consideration, but if you don't fit all three of the or two out of three of those criteria, unfortunately, you might still be kind of lost. However, I will say that a lot of women take my program and find a lot of success even without the formal PCOS diagnosis, because working on your PCOS is essentially working on hormone health. And if you've got issues with period stuff or androgens or whatever, or fertility, it's going to be beneficial. So it's not like, eating for and moving your body and managing your stress for PCOS is going to be detrimental. It's all supportive. So I'll say that too.
Sure. And here's a question that often comes up and I think causes a lot of confusion for women, which is
Mhm.
I've been told I have polycystic ovaries on an ultrasound, but I don't know if that means I have PCOS. And so
Mhm.
you'd assume they've got regular periods and maybe not, and normal androgen levels and no signs of hirsutism or acne or anything like that. What's going on there, Corey?
So, um, so if you have polycystic ovaries and you're not meeting any of the other criteria, we do typically see period issues there. So, we do. I typically will see irregular periods if you have polycystic ovaries because of that ovulation and follicle issue. So, yeah, gosh, I mean, I feel like there's so much to consider with other, lab work you can get done. But that's probably something to dive into with your doctor
Yeah.
as far as that diagnostic piece goes. Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
so can you have polycystic ovaries but not PCOS?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
cool.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, so many things to
So many
clarify
things.
here.
I know. I
I'm
know.
just like, and what about this scenario? And what about that scenario?
Yeah.
Because it is a very complex syndrome. I mean, that's why it's not a one disease, it's a syndrome because it can
Right.
present so differently. And we
Exactly.
see like it used to be the classic was that of PCOS was that you were someone who struggles with their weight, but then we see very
Mm-hmm.
thin women also struggle. I think about like celebrities with PCOS, like
Yep.
Posh Beckham, Victoria
Beckham.
Beckham,
Yes. Yep.
and she's gone
Definitely
on to have
not an obese individual.
no, and
Yeah.
she's gone on to have I think 4 children as well, which
Yes,
is
that's right. Yeah.
yeah.
Right. Yep.
So it's super interesting how it can manifest. And would you say, Corey, would you describe it like a spectrum?
Um,
Or is it a
so
yes or no? Like you have PCOS and you've got all the symptoms, or
Yeah, I know I've actually done a lot more diving into that in recent months because I kept having people wanting to join my program and say, well, I just have mild PCOS. I'm like, mild? It's like being a little bit pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not, right? And that's how I work from. So I do have those types of clients who, and I think I can answer yes, but you still have PCOS, even if you're struggling, not as much as the person next to you, right? Because I treat women who have the whole enchilada. They've got elevated testosterone, their DHT is through the roof, they've got facial hair, acne, they can't lose a pound, they're not ovulating, so they want to get pregnant and they can't. They've got, joint pain and migraines and all these inflammatory components. And they have polycystic ovaries. So they've got that pretty much they're checking every box. And they've got blood sugar and insulin. Maybe they're pre-diabetic or something like that. So I've definitely got those types of clients. And then I have clients or, program members who really just have irregular periods and like mildly elevated testosterone, but both are working on ovulation issues, right? They're both trying to conceive. So yes, but no. Like, yes, I can see people with PCOS exist on a spectrum, and also depending on how much work that they've put into management, right?
Yeah.
If maybe that second person has actually come down to a normal BMI versus like a higher one. And I always tell clients too, and women with PCOS to manage their own expectations of treatment outcomes, right? So if you have PCOS and one of your PCOS things you've got going on is you have irregular periods and you're maybe getting them every, 50, 60, 70 days, you can't expect to work on your PCOS and then have this beautiful 28-day cycle every month. Like, get that out of your mind, because it just isn't realistic for a lot of us. If you're even getting a period every 40, 45 days, that's huge. That's a big, that's a big amount of progress. Yeah. So to answer your question, I think it's hard to say yes and no, but I still think even if you're not dealing with as many issues as that woman that I just defined for you, you still have PCOS, and there's still things that you can absolutely do to make that, whatever it is you're dealing with, better. And with the whole weight component, I'm just speaking from my own experience. At my heaviest weight, my PCOS was at its worst, right? And now, I'm pregnant now. I'm very pregnant now, but pre-pregnancy, at this kind of way different BMI, my BMI I think was 21 versus it was 25, 26, something like that, when I was in college. And my period's still, it's better, but it's still irregular. Like it's not coming every 28 days. So weight and all of, management is not a fix. There's no cure, but there are things, like I said, steps we can take to make those symptoms a lot better, depending on what we need, what our body needs.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I know that was a long-winded answer, but
no, it's so good. And I'm so glad that you answered it in full, because I think PCOS needs that. It's not a topic where just here's an infographic on Instagram and you've got everything.
Yes. Yeah, I know, right?
But Corey, just shifting gears slightly, because one thing before I let you go, I have to ask you about this show. I really love showing people examples of women overcoming hard stuff and going through challenges. And I just think you are such an outstanding example of that. You've got this incredibly successful business, you help people, you're following your dreams, and yet it hasn't all been smooth sailing for you. And I remember you sharing about your story. I was you fully pulled at my heart with this one. When you were pregnant, I believe with your first child, do you mind sharing that story and telling everyone what you went through there, that you were completely left in this total rug pulled from under you situation?
Yeah, definitely. And I feel open to sharing, because the moment I do, I get so many women who message me in the same position, and that experience, just like PCOS and just like anything, can, you know, anything we're dealing with, anxiety, depression, can feel so isolating. And it's so helpful to know that other people have been through that and come out on the other side. So yeah, so this is my second, and I have a almost 3-year-old. And when I was pregnant with her, it was about the 35-week mark. My husband and my partner of 5 years asked for a divorce and he left me. So that was just a earth-shattering, you know, experience to spend the remainder of my pregnancy alone, and trying to navigate divorce land and child custody and visitation. And while I was also trying to have, you know, prep for birth at the same time, it was horrible. And it was lots of anxiety and lots of, you know, just pure cortisol and adrenaline just like running through me. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. It was really bad. So anywho, I came up to Northern California because I was in kind of more central in the Bay Area, or well, I'm still northern, but I came farther north, and I came to be with my family at that time, and they kind of took me in. And I was on maternity leave at that time already, so I had no income, I had no money, really. And it was a whole evolution of who I was, and I had to completely redefine myself as a single mom. And I had my business going, but it was nowhere near where it is now. So I also had to kind of reinvent, how am I going to parent and also run my own company alone. And so my parents, they let me live with them, and I lived with them for a year. And I don't know how many of my clients really knew it was happening, but I had my office set up in like our guest room upstairs, and like a little desk, and I worked day and night, and I built my business, at that time, just late nights, like up in the middle of the night breastfeeding, and trying to get it all done. And I ended up being able to save, and I purchased my own home. And yeah, things have grown immensely in my business. But I think a lot of that honestly was due to what happened, because it kind of lit this fire under me as a woman. Like I could either go two ways, right? I could either crumble and just be like this depressed person, this heap, or I could be strong and be an example and a model for my daughter about, what does a strong woman look like, even, in the face of everything that happened. So it's been a long road. And then I ended up meeting my current partner, and that's just been like the most amazing love story. And we've been together now a couple of years, and he's just fully embraced his role as, father, stepfather. Obviously he'll be an actual father in a couple of days, but yeah, just he's been such an amazing pillar of strength for us too, and support, and kind of, showing my daughter what it looks like for a man to like love her mom. And he's so supportive of my business, and of, women in general. And it's been such a journey over the last like 3 years. So
I can
lots,
only imagine.
yeah. Yeah. And I was raised by a single mom too, and it was something that I very, very much tried hard to avoid. I didn't want to be that. I wanted, the marriage and the white picket fence. And that's what I thought we were set up moving towards. So it was like this, yeah,
And
180.
then life was like, nope, we've got other plans for you. Sorry.
Yes. Right. Yeah. And that's what happens. Everyone deals with something, maybe it's an illness, maybe it's a death of a close family member. That's really been, that's been my thing that I've had to struggle through, and I've learned a ton. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I appreciate you sharing that so much, because
Yeah.
honestly, I could listen to like a story like that a million times. And
Yeah.
it's because I've been there too, and I know what it's like, not that exact situation, but I know what it's like to feel like life has just come in and cursed you and
Yes.
left you for dead. And it's like, I've been
Yeah.
forgotten about, and now I'm like, is it ever going to be okay again? And just
Exactly.
imagining if you'd known at that time what lay ahead for you, that you hadn't been
Mhm.
forgotten and there were good things ahead. And you could still have
Totally.
that dream.
Yes, I know. I think about that all the time, especially, going into this pregnancy, being so nervous about, what was going to happen. And it's really been a 180 experience, my partner now, and the amount of support and love he's shown me. It's kind of restored my faith in, partnership, and I'm so glad that I've had that opportunity, because it can feel so, when it's first happening, like, oh my gosh, this is going to happen again if I ever go down that road again, and all people would do this to me, and all men would do that, and it's just, that's not logical. It's just the way that we, our brains work. But yeah, I totally agree.
Oh, and there will be so many women who need to hear that story and have
Hmm.
that hope, and that's so beautiful, Corey. Oh,
Totally.
thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing. I was gonna say as well, I was curious as to the where you're at in your
Hmm.
pregnancy now, if it's like brought up all of that again for you in a way, like just reflecting on the where you're at now versus then.
Uh-huh. Yeah, definitely. When I hit week 35, which is when everything happened, I was kind of emotional, um and I think that the thing that was most helpful was just talking that through with my partner, and being on the same page with him, understanding why I was having that fear and those emotions coming up, and communicating to him, hey, this is why I'm feeling this type of way this week. And he already knew. We've had lots of discussion about it, but when it actually came up, just that communication piece was so helpful. But it definitely, it did pop up more than I thought. And I mean, my pregnancy is not over. I mean, it's almost. I have a few days probably, but yeah, I'm still thinking about that, and I feel grateful every day to, to never take for granted how important that support piece is, especially as you get ready for labor. And you're really, pregnant women are the most vulnerable out there, and especially when you are so large that you can barely walk, which is where I'm at right now. Can barely drive, so get in that, hoist myself in and out of the car, get out of bed. So you're so vulnerable, and you really, having that support piece is almost, essential. So yeah, it's definitely been, and I'm so glad I've had this second experience with somebody like my current partner, versus the other one.
Yeah,
So
really brings out the appreciation, I'm
it does.
sure.
I never take anything for granted ever again. Like, if he does anything small, I'm like, oh my God, you're the best. Because it is so nice to have that,
Oh,
this
it
time
sure
around.
is. And Corey, you deserve nothing less. Like, I'm
Oh,
just
thank
so, so
you.
happy you've got this happy ending. It's just beautiful. Um,
Yes, I am too.
so, oh, I'm just like, I get shivers hearing that whole story. But I'd love you to just let us know as we sort of wrap up. It's been so
Mhm.
amazing chatting to you. I could obviously just keep talking with you, but I've got to let you
Totally.
go.
Yeah.
Where can
Yeah.
we find you? And if
Mhm.
people are interested in working with you, what are the dates? How do we do that?
Yes. So I'm probably most active on my Instagram account. So that's the Women's Dietitian. And actually I have the same like handle or whatever you want to call it all across the board. So TikTok, my website, www.thewomensdietitian.com. So it's all the same. But I run PCOS programs. I have two, and I run them several times a year. I am going to be doing a subscription membership based thing, it probably next year. But for now, I open and run them like several times a year. So the next time I will open them will be the end of August. Um, and basically, one of them is all about PCOS symptom mastery and weight loss, weight management. And that's my PCOS Boss Academy. And then I have my fertility, my Get Pregnant with PCOS. And that is all focused on conquering your PCOS symptoms and getting pregnant. So optimizing fertility. There is also a weight loss mode on that one that you can check into if you want to do both. So those are the two programs I offer. And I'm, not really doing like a real maternity leave. I'll still be working here and there, and working. So I'm not seeing one-on-one clients anymore, but eventually I'll reopen my health testing packages where I run Dutch hormone tests and GI map gut health tests. And I typically run about 4 or 5 of those each month. So you can be on the lookout for that in a couple months when I'm ready to kind of dive back into more one-on-one stuff.
Fabulous. And we'll have links to all of that in the show notes so people can find you nice and easily. Thank you so much, Cory. It's been such a delight. You're an absolute powerhouse of knowledge and so damn inspiring. Yes, like we are so strong. Like we are so capable of so many things and I love it.
It is true. Thank you so much for having me, Georgie. This has been a pleasure, and it's so nice to be able to connect a little bit outside of social media. So thank you.
If you're ready for the deep dive into this work to master your anxious mind, I invite you to join the Anxiety Reset program. Over 90 days, I'll be guiding you on how to build your mental resilience, reprogram those limiting beliefs that keep you stuck in self-doubt, heal your gut, balance your hormones, nourish your mind, body, and soul. Using a combined approach of naturopathy, nutrition, hypnotherapy, and live group coaching with me, you'll feel supported and motivated to show up for yourself consistently, day after day. And this is how you will experience extraordinary results. You can master your anxious mind. The best time to begin is right now. Let's do it together. You'll find the link to learn more in the show notes. Thank you for listening. We have reached the end of this episode. If you enjoy this podcast and you find it helpful, I would really appreciate it if you would hit subscribe or share this episode on your Instagram stories and make sure you tag @Georgie the Naturopath. But that is all for today. Please be kind to yourselves. Know that you are enough and you are exactly where you need to be.